At Central Christian Church, we are growing together in our understanding and our faith. We are touching lives with the love of Christ, and we are sharing our gifts within and beyond our congregation. We are glad to share our Sunday morning messages with you. We hope you will hear a word of comfort and encouragement for your life. May God bless you and grant you peace and joy.
I read this week about a retired pastor who told about her first and last question in her ministry. The first question came during her first pastorate. Tragically, a young couple had been involved in a car accident, and their daughter was severely injured, and she died the next day. During a visit with the family after the child's death, the young mother asked, "Why didn't God let my little girl live?" The last question that this pastor 40 years later received was at her last pastorate when she was visiting a severely ill woman in the nursing home. In the hallway after the visit, she found the son of this woman, and they talked together, and he asked her, "Why doesn't God let my mother die? Why didn't God let my little girl live? Why doesn't God let my mother die?" And in between those two questions during her 40 years of ministry were other why questions. Why did my wife leave me? Why did I get cancer? Why didn't I get that promotion at work? Why won't my depression go away? Why does God allow hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis, and sinkholes? We all have our why questions. And there are no easy answers to the questions about suffering. Easy answers to them just don't exist. And so the question is often asked, why does God allow suffering in our world? Well, of course, as we learn about each other and we learn about our world, it is true that human sin and mistakes and our living planet explain much of the suffering in our world. We know why earthquakes and tornadoes and all of those natural occurrences happen. We can even predict some of them now. We understand a little more about our planet than we did. We know where sickness comes from. Somebody invented the microscope, and we can see bacteria and germs and flu viruses. And so we have some explanation about some of the suffering and the occurrences in our world. We can probably even do the forensics on a car accident and tell you exactly what happened at what moment in some cases and explain the hows of that suffering. But maybe not the whys. Maybe not the whys. Elie Wiesel, a Jew and Holocaust survivor, tells the tale of when he was a teenager and he was imprisoned at Auschwitz, the infamous Nazi concentration camp. His family was all shipped to Auschwitz, and at that camp, all of his family, except for himself, perished, died at the hands of the brutality there. He tells a powerful story from his experience there of a hanging of 3 prisoners that everyone else in the camp was forced to witness. 3 men hung up in the gallows. Actually, one of them was just a teenage boy. They had been accused of something that the Nazis wanted to make sure other inmates didn't try. And so each inmate was forced to walk right in front of the gallows and look up at those who were hanging there. By the time he got to the platform, the 2 adults had already succumbed and were dead. But the young teenage boy was still struggling for breath and for life. Behind him in the line, Wiesel heard a man ask, "Where is God now? Where is He?" That's the real question, isn't it? Where is God? Where is God when I am ill? Where is God when I face the reality of death in my life? Where is God in my deteriorating marriage, or my financial problems, my doubt, my depression? Where is God in the midst of war, terrorism, earthquakes, fear, and hatred? The execution continued. The lad lingered on. And once again, Eli heard the man ask, "Where is God?" And he said, "I heard a voice within me answer him. Where is God? He is there, hanging on the gallows. He is there, hanging on the gallows." Where is God when suffering occurs in our world? Well, my friends, the cross of Jesus Christ tells us that God is present in the midst of suffering. The story of Good Friday that leads to today affirms that God enters human suffering, works to relieve that suffering, and will ultimately redeem our suffering. The cross of Jesus tells us that even in suffering, especially in suffering, God is present. And when God is present, there is hope. Where we might go astray is to think that God is somehow going to just eliminate our suffering. But in the cross of Jesus, God entered our suffering, so that God understands when we doubt. God knows when we're angry about our suffering. God knows when we just get tired and we think it's time to throw in the towel and not go another step further. You know, that's where the disciples were early on this morning. There was little hope that remained for them. They had given up everything that they had had, all of their careers, their family, everything, and followed this one they knew to be the Messiah. They knew to be the Savior. They called Jesus Master, Teacher, and Friend, companion on that journey. Everything dropped to follow Him. They knew what He was doing. They saw the miracles. They witnessed the glory of God in their presence. And still, they hung Him up on that cross. Still, he became the next victim of torture and terror of the Roman Empire and was executed as a common criminal on the cross. How could they follow him now? How could they have any hope now? They had seen his lifeless, abused, mocked, beaten body placed in that tomb. The stone rolled to cover it. Only the angels of God could move it. But to hope for that? To hope for that? They were scattering. They were afraid. Because, you know, those Roman soldiers are coming for us next. Because we followed that rabble-rouser. We followed that traitor of Caesar. We followed that one who fed the poor and healed the sick and brought in the outcast and ate with sinners and welcomed prostitutes and tax collectors into his midst. While he even went out to the lepers and the blind. He lifted up women. He even encountered and raised the dead. They're coming for us. So fear, despair, grief, loss, pain, suffering had set in for the disciples by this morning. But then, one of the women, or a few of the women, depending on which gospel you read, went out to where the tomb was. The light just breaking, shadows in that place. And found that stone rolled away. We know who you're looking for. We know who you seek. But he is not here. He is not here. Now the first thing that had to go through their mind was, somebody stole him. They took him away. We can't even touch his body. We can't anoint him. We can't do what we need to do. Hope. Any last little bit of hope just flushed down the drain. Then, though, those words, he is not here, for he has been resurrected, just as he said. And hope was alive again. Hope had come near again. God had entered into the suffering of humanity and had not only relieved it, but had redeemed it and made new life. It was alive again. The last word of the gospel of Jesus Christ, my friends, is not crucifixion. The story doesn't end there. They don't just all wander off, taking a flower off the top of the casket, shaking their heads and saying, he was such a good guy. Because there's another event. The stone, that big burdensome stone, got rolled away. And the tomb was empty. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. No, the last word of the gospel is resurrection. It is not despair. It is hope. It is hope.